said that he can negotiate the end of the war in 24 hours. Is that possible?
Well, if he can get it done in 24 hours, that'd be great. I mean, it stops the conflict. I mean, that's the, and then we get back to more global security.
The elephant in the room here at the Aspen Forum has been, will the U.S. find itself in a war with China, or can it deter such a conflict, particularly over the Taiwan issue? You've just returned from a trip to the Pacific. You met with your Japanese, South Korean, and Philippine counterparts. There is brewing tension over a little island that many people, I don't even know if you call it an island, the Second Thomas Shoal, is a flashpoint where, explain to us, to the forum, why it's significant and why it could become a flashpoint and pull the U.S. into a conflict with China.
Okay. Well, first I'd say is I don't see that a conflict with the People's Republic of China is imminent or inevitable. But we're going to make sure we stay ready. The Second Thomas Shoal is just off the coast of the Philippines, in the South China Sea, as most of us would call it. In the Philippines, they call it the West Philippine Sea, and it's really about it's inside their exclusive economic zone, and the debate between the 9-dash line and claimants on that particular shoal. And this is about sovereignty for the Philippines, and then the challenge to that sovereignty by the PRC. This ship that is there, that has been beached, actually has a number of Filipino service members. And one way that the Philippines maintains that sovereignty is by staying on that particular shoal. And so that is what I'd say somewhat emblematic of the others, because there's 8 other shoals similarly off the coast of the Philippines that are in a bit of the same situation. So it's important when you start thinking about sovereignty and having a free and open Indo-Pacific, and not letting this be a flashpoint, but it's emblematic of things that could happen if we don't pay attention.
So does the mutual defense treaty that you've signed with the Philippines require the U.S. to come to Philippines aid if the Chinese continue harassing their ships and maybe even sink one of those ships or kill some of their service members?
Well, that as our politicians work through that in the mutual defense treaty, there are aspects that as we work through defense, and our support to Philippines continues. Part of their conversation I had when I was there in the Philippines, meeting with their national security advisor, their Secretary of National Defense, and my counterpart. Our relationship continues to build, and the momentum continues to build, and our support, if the mutual defense treaty is ever called upon, is going to be there.
There are a number of authors here who have written recently about a potential flashpoint over Taiwan. We have David Sanger, he's written New Cold Wars. Dmitry Alperovitch and Garrett Graff has written World on the Brink. Matt Pottinger and his Hoover Institute staff have written The Boiling Moat. I do not recommend these for bedtime reading if you have any anxiety. But the question is, can the U.S. win a war against China if Beijing tries to take Taiwan, from your military perspective?
Yes. I'm fully confident in our force. I am fully confident in our force. You should be too. We have we are the most lethal, most respected combat force in the world. And every nation I go to wants to be like us. We got to be a role model. Now, it's going to take, all the nation if we go to conflict with the PRC. And I'm confident, if we're challenged, we will be there. And I have full confidence in our service members.
Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery was the responsible for strategic planning at PACOM. He's gone through 6 war games over this kind of scenario, and he says, and I think it's widely agreed, that in the first month there could be 30,000 American dead if this were to happen, and that maybe Americans don't realize there will be no golden hour, there will be no rescue, aircraft carriers will be sunk, 3,000 people lost at a time. The distance is very different from any other war that we've been involved in. And yet, there's also a new report from Japan, from the Japanese government, suggesting that the assumption that you'd have a month to respond and build up, that President Xi may have taken some lessons from President Putin's invasion of Ukraine to move quickly. And that new Japanese report suggests that China, based on the exercises last year that they saw, that they plan to take Taiwan in a week, not a month. What would that do to U.S. military planning? And is that a fair assessment? Is that an accurate assessment?
Well, let me, if I could, I would address maybe what Admiral Montgomery did say. And I will tell you that if you go back 4 years ago when I became the Air Force Chief of Staff, I wrote Accelerate, Change, or Lose. If you go back and look at it, I said pretty much the same thing. A future conflict is not like the conflicts we've been having for the past 30 years. These will be major conflicts akin to what we saw in World War II. And so we got to come to grips with that, one. Two, the PRC knows where our advantages are and the combat capability we can bring to bear. And, you know, my sense is they'll want to go quick so they can do it before we can bring capability there, which is why we were focused on, you know, the capabilities that we have forward, how we look at our logistics chains well before any type of conflict. You know, as the Air Force Chief of Staff, my last major conference with my leadership back in June, we did a logistics tabletop exercise. And then I wrote a letter to the chairman, knowing I was nominated to be the chairman, waiting to get confirmed. So it was really a letter to myself that we need to focus on logistics. And so what I've been working with my J4, my director for logistics, is additional tabletop exercise to really wring this out. The more we can show that we can get there fast is greater deterrence.
Matt Pottinger and many of the former president's advisors have said that Taiwan is not buying the right weapons. Former President Trump himself said this week Taiwan needs to spend more on its defense, indicating he may not defend Taiwan. Do you agree that Taiwan needs to spend more on its defense, and what are you doing to make sure that they buy the right weapons?
Well, we're engaged with Taiwan on their future procurement, the procurement they've already had in place, but also you know, weapon systems that will make them very effective in the defense. The thing that I see, you know, over the past several years is that the character of warfare has changed. You know, the nature hasn't changed. You know, it's a test against will, it's political will. But just the fact when you look at technology and you look at the use of drones, you look at the use of cyber, all these other factors that come into play, that you know, it may not be the high-end capability that we're used to using, but a mix of capability that can create a greater defense for Taiwan and make them a much tougher target and much more challenging for the PRC.
Let's turn back to the Middle East. Next week, the Iraqi leadership is coming to negotiate whether the U.S. troops will be able to stay in Iraq. What would happen if U.S. troops were forced to leave Iraq? There's indications that ISIS is, there are twice as many attacks in Iraq and Syria by ISIS this year alone. Is ISIS reconstituting?
Well, part of the reason why we're there is why we went back in 2014 was to defeat ISIS, and I had a firsthand piece of that as the Air Commodity Commander, but also a Deputy Commander of the United States Central Command as we defeated ISIS. The key part is not letting that resurgence occur, and our ability to, as the coalition for Operation Inherent Resolve, to continue, but then transition to a bilateral relationship. And continue to have the relationship with the Iraqis, as well as other nations that have relationships with the Iraqis, to maintain the security there. At the same time, we're paying attention to ISIS there that emanates out of Syria and other parts of the Middle East.
So if the U.S. were forced to pull out, what impact would that have? You'd have to pull out of Syria also, correct? It
would have impact on our ability to actually put pressure on ISIS, and we'd have to look at how we would do it in different ways. And we've, that part of our job is to be able to flex, and we'll continue to plan and provide options to the president and the secretary if any decision comes one way or one direction or another.
It's been said that Iran has never won a war and never lost a negotiation, and that it will fight to the last proxy. For the first time in months, Iranian proxies have targeted a U.S. base in Iraq. What do you make of the timing of those attacks?
Well, There's a couple things I make of this. We watched before 7 October, our forces were very rarely getting attacked. And then after 7 October of last year, a lot of attacks on our bases. We spent a lot of time and effort making sure we were doing the force protection. Unfortunately, we lost 3 service members back on the 28th of January. And as a result, we had a pretty strong response back. And so the last time before just recently was about 7 February. So it's been almost 6-7 months now since the last time we were attacked. Those proxies have been chomping at the bit to be able to strike against it. Every once in a while, they'll do something kind of a one-off. I don't see this as them breaking away from the guidance that they've gotten, somewhat from Iran not to attack us.
Maybe it's a little message before negotiating in Washington on Monday.
Could be. I don't know. Yeah. The key part is we're going to continue to defend ourselves, and then we're going to respond appropriately at a time and place of our choosing.
Secretary Blinken just told the forum that it's still U.S. policy to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but he also said that they are 1 to 2 weeks away from breakout. Are you prepared to stop Iran militarily if they decide to pursue and break out?
We have options to do so. Okay. We stay ready.
All right. How worried are you that America's adversaries will become adventurous after November 5th, or even in this unstable time frame of a raucous election, if U.S. elections are contested or one party doesn't accept the results? Some have called it an invitation to conflict. How are you preparing for that?
Well, I'm looking at this day in and day out. Not November, not January, not February. I'm looking at last week. What I mean by that is, if you look at our national defense and national security strategy, there are 5 key challenges outlined in those documents: People's Republic of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and violent extremists. All of them are active right now, and in some areas working together. And so my day-to-day focus, no matter what day it is to ensure we are best prepared for any one of those that might create a challenge for us.
Before we go, I need to ask you, when was the last time that you met in person with President Biden, and how was he mentally?
I last met with him, that was last week. And let me just say that, I realize there's a lot of debate, and I don't want to get into the debate. My job is to provide, advice to the President, Secretary of Defense, National Security Council, and the rest of our national security apparatus. And on all the times I've engaged with the President, he's been engaged. He's asked us, very pointed questions and made decisions. I'll just leave it at that.
We have about a minute left. Do we have time for one question? Maybe from one of the... Anybody? Don't be shy.
Sir, what do you see as the greatest emerging threat you would like to train your troops to that they're not currently?
I think I just named all 5 of them. I'm serious. Part of this is expect the unexpected. This is exactly why when I wrote the memo on 2 October, the second day I was as the chairman, honing our warfighting skill has primacy in all we do. I want our service members to be so focused on their individual skill set, how they bring that individual skill set together as a team in their units, how we bring it together as a joint force, how we do it with our allies and partners. We exist to fight and win our nation's wars. That's why we exist. We want to be so good at what we do that our adversaries never want to mess with us. And if they do, we want to be their worst nightmare. Personally and professionally, I do not play for second place. Okay? I play to win, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it's an unfair fight. That's my focus, and so we got to stay nimble on this, kind of look long, and that's the other thing I try to look at is how do I want to be more proactive than reactive. Okay, I do not want to be surprised. The only time I like a surprise is on my birthday and Christmas. Okay? I'm really focused on how do we stay ahead of these things and make sure we're doing everything we can to be ready be ready when the nation calls.
Thank you to the Aspen Security Forum, and thank you, General Brown, for your excellent
Thank you,
comments
Jennifer.
today. Thank you.